Bar Pitti is a popular New York City Italian restaurant and a hotspot for celebrities. The restaurant has attracted the likes of David and Victoria Beckham, Leonardo DiCaprio, Beyoncé and Jay-Z, the list goes on and on. However, Bar Pitti doesn't have the best reviews, it's cash only, has a B-grade sanitary score, and the food doesn't even look that good in my opinion. Still, I had to see what all the hype was about, and I was disappointed. Today I'm here in New York City, right along the Hudson River, and it's a pretty nice day out. I'll bet it's a little cold, but it's still a nice day nonetheless. Earlier in the day, I had, well, a mediocre at best lunch at one of the city's hottest spots for celebrities. I went to the classic Italian restaurant Bar Pitti, and yeah, it wasn't great. To be fair, the restaurant is more so known for being a draw for celebrities rather than their food, but at the same time, celebrities obviously go there for some reason. And I wanted to find out what that reason is, because on the surface, Bar Pitti seems like the kind of restaurant that I'd just skip. The place doesn't look like anything special, and the reviews on Google and Yelp aren't the greatest, plus it's cash only, and the New York City Health Department gave the place a B rating. But at the same time, I'm always willing to give every place a chance. Plus, there are tons of people who are regulars to the establishment and absolutely love Bar Pitti. So today I went to the restaurant for lunch to find out what all the hype was about, and this was my experience. Bar Pitti was established in 1992 in Greenwich Village. The restaurant was opened by Silvano Marchetto and Giovanni Tognozzi. However, that relationship went sour, and Marchetto eventually sold his half of the restaurant, but the feud continued. There was even an argument over a potentially stolen meatball recipe. Silvano ran his establishment Da Silvano, which was also a celebrity draw right next door to Bar Pitti, but sadly his restaurant closed in 2016. While Bar Pitti has a phone number to make reservations, the establishment almost exclusively caters to walk-ins. I arrived about 10 minutes after it opened for lunch on a Thursday, and I had no problem getting a table. Although the restaurant did fill up as my meal progressed. Bar Pitti isn't very large, and tables are very close to each other, which may turn off some people. It's simply not the restaurant for quiet and intimate conversations. However, if say Paris Hilton or Margot Robbie were seated next to me, I certainly wouldn't mind the lack of space, but what did bother me were the chairs. They weren't comfortable at all. Plain and simple, the chairs weren't too kind on my back. Another aspect of Bar Pitti that I didn't like was their B sanitation grade. In New York City, letter grades are assigned to restaurants via a point system that is a reflection of their sanitary score. Now, most good restaurants in New York City receive A grades. However, even those establishments might not be perfect, as even little things can count against restaurants. Still, if most of the decent restaurants in the city can receive A grades, why can't Bar Pitti? I then turned my attention to the food menus, which there were two of. One was a list of the restaurant's standard offerings, which are available every day, and the other is a chalkboard list with the day's specials that my server placed across from me right as I was seated. I ordered one dish off the regular menu and one of the daily specials. Next, I contemplated what to drink. Bar Pitti has a small list of bottled wine, but they also have a selection of wine by the glass. What stood out for me were their beer offerings, and they weren't great. Menabrea was the only Italian beer listed on Bar Pitti's menu, and the prices were high. Now, there's nothing wrong with the Heineken, but paying $11.50 for it is just too much. Not to mention the unnamed non-alcoholic beer was sold at the exact same price. That's another thing about the restaurant. It can be expensive, which is made even more frustrating by the fact that they don't accept credit cards. Now, I knew this before I went to Bar Pitti, and it's printed on their menus, but it does seem like that a lot of people either forgot about the restaurant's payment policy or were not aware of it. Thankfully, there's an ATM near the establishment's washrooms, and there are banks in the vicinity of the restaurant. Coming back to the beverage question, I chose a glass of wine. I went with the 2022 Montepulciano d'Abruzzo from Villa d'Oro. It was okay, but nothing special. Although the restaurant really put a pretty sizable price tag on that glass. Considering that Bar Pitti charged $15.50 for the glass of wine, whereas a bottle typically averages around $12, that was way overpriced. Thankfully, the restaurant doesn't charge for their bread and olive oil, which was also given to me right after I ordered. The bread was fine, it's not warm or anything, but the olive oil was nice to pair it with, and I really appreciate complimentary bread when so many restaurants are doing away with it. However, before I could even finish a slice of bread, I was presented with my pasta course.
Cheese, sir? Yes, please. That's good. All right. Thank you so much.
The pasta came out fast. I think it came to my table within 5 minutes after placing my order. I got one of their most popular and talked about dishes, the Pappardelle alla Fisulana. The course consisted of flat and sizable homemade pasta with cream, tomatoes, parmigiano, and smoked bacon. Appearance-wise, I wasn't impressed. Frankly, it looked a little sloppy. However, that's an aspect I could easily look past if it tasted good. Unfortunately, the dish was a letdown. Now, it wasn't bad, but I was expecting more, especially since it's such a popular dish. The pasta was certainly cooked correctly, but the flavor was the issue. Frankly, the dish was sort of bland and really needed some seasoning. I also thought that there was too much sauce, which just overwhelmed the pasta. Now, the bacon in the dish definitely sounded promising, but once again, it didn't have a lot of flavor. There wasn't much of it, and the bacon that was on my plate was smothered by the sauce. In addition, I probably should have gotten more cheese shaved onto my pasta because the dish just needed more flavor. Overall, I just felt like the course could have been so much better because it certainly sounded appetizing, but it was executed poorly. Unfortunately, things got even worse as my next dish was even more of a disappointment. I went with one of the chalkboard daily specials, the pollo organico con endivia. Presentation-wise, it definitely looked better than the pasta, but sadly, that was nearly the only advantage this course had over my last. It's a rather simple dish consisting of grilled chicken topped with endives and sun-dried tomatoes. When I took my first bite, I thought, seriously, is this it? Frankly, the only flavor I got from the chicken was from its grill marks. It was just so bland. Fortunately, I realized that I completely forgot to squeeze the lemon included with the course over my food. I milked that lemon for all it's worth. That dish needed every bit of help it could get. Thankfully, the squeeze of citrus did improve it, but it sadly wasn't enough to save that course. The dish was the definition of boring. In terms of the chicken, it came out very thin. Now, it wasn't dry, but it certainly could have been more tender. It also really needed to be seasoned more. There was hardly any flavor to it. The endives had a similar story. They were bland and tasteless. Basically, they did nothing for the chicken. Thankfully, the sun-dried tomatoes weren't bad. They gave a pop of color and actually tasted like something. I was concerned for a minute that my taste buds simply stopped working. Basically, the only positive thing that I could say about the dish was that it seemed healthy at least. Overall, for costing me almost $30, that course was a massive disappointment. Fortunately, my lunch ended on a high note with dessert. I got a tiramisu, and I'm not kidding, it was presented to me maybe 30 seconds after I ordered it. For all the restaurant's faults, slow service is definitely not one of them, at least with my experience. The dish was plated quite simply in a small bowl. Now, I wished that it was a bit larger because the flavor was divine. The cream on top of the dessert was so rich, smooth, and luscious. It combined perfectly with the classic tiramisu flavors of the course. Overall, I loved it, and it was nice to actually enjoy something about my experience at Bar Pitti. With my dessert finished, it was time to pay the bill, which was actually placed on my table at the same time as my tiramisu. I can definitely see how a lot of people complain about how the service at Bar Pitti feels rushed. In fact, a new diner sat at the table right next to mine, and the server placed the chalkboard menu for her on my table before I even left. Now, I didn't mind it, but the fact is, most good restaurants would never do something like that. Anyways, back to the bill. My total came to, I think, $88.19, but it was hard to tell since the receipt was handwritten. With my tip, I spent $105, which I thought was a bit overpriced for what I got. In summation, I can only speak from my experience, and having just 3 dishes is not the best sample to make a perfectly accurate assessment of the restaurant. However, there were just so many other factors about the establishment besides some of the food that I just didn't like. Plus, it's important to consider the other Italian restaurants in NYC. Bar Pitti may have stood out among the city's Italian eateries when it opened, but times have changed, and Bar Pitti, for better and for worse, I don't think has kept up. So yeah, that was pretty mediocre, but I mean, could always be worse. Food-wise, my pasta was okay. I mean, I think the dish that I had was very overhyped. But it was at least better than the chicken, which was just so bland and frankly boring. Thankfully, at least my tiramisu was pretty good. I definitely enjoyed that one. But besides the food, I just don't think there are a lot of great qualities about the restaurant. The whole cash-only thing is a serious pain. I mean, the restaurant's gotta get with the times. And it's not like it's a cheap restaurant either. I think a lot of those dishes are overpriced. Now, if the food was unique and delicious, I'm always willing to pay a higher price, but what I had, it wasn't. Now, in a lot of these Google and Yelp reviews, I do see a lot of people complain about the service, and thankfully, I thought I had a pretty good server. It wasn't like great service, but it was solid. He was a nice guy, made jokes. I really have no complaints in that department. In terms of the atmosphere, it was nothing special, but I do feel the real draw of the restaurant is their outdoor patio and sidewalk dining when it's warm out. However, that aspect alone wouldn't be a strong enough reason to get me to go to the restaurant. In terms of Bar Pitti being a draw for celebrities, yeah, it's definitely intriguing and it's exciting, but this is New York City. There are celebrities everywhere. Frankly, there are a lot of hotspots in this city that bring in the celebs and that have much better food. Basically, I just don't get why celebrities would go to Bar Pitti. At its best, Bar Pitti is just alright, but this is New York City. Alright, good, that doesn't cut it. In this city, one has options because there are so many better restaurants out there with more exciting food, better service, more reasonable prices, that take credit card and do not have a B rating from the health department. In summation, I definitely didn't have a terrible experience at Bar Pitti, and it is always nice to be out and to experience a new restaurant, but I don't think I'll be coming back. I think Bar Pitti is very overhyped and very overrated. Well, you can't win them all.